Welcome in, fellow Potterheads. Tonight, beneath the starry ceiling of the Great Hall, we will be going over magical tales from the wizarding world to guide you gently into the realm of dreams. Before we disappear behind the veil of dreams, take a moment to cast your support spell, tap the like button, and join our magical community by subscribing. Also, I'm curious what time it is in your corner of the wizarding world. Whether you're watching from California, Hogsmeade, or London, share your location in the comments below. Your participation will be greatly appreciated and helps our magical community grow stronger. Now, the time for incantations has passed. Dim your lights, find your most comfortable position, and prepare to be transported to the world of witchcraft and wizardry as we begin tonight's magical tales. Chapter 1. The Frozen Foundations of Tundra Magic. Long before the Ministry of Magic established weather stations across the Northern Territories, long before wizards understood the intricate relationship between temperature and magical energy, the vast tundra held secrets that would reshape our understanding of magic itself. In the endless expanse of frozen earth, where the horizon stretches unbroken, and the silence is so profound it seems to whisper ancient truths, magical forces behave in ways that would astonish even the most learned scholars of temperate climates. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of this primordial wilderness, where the ground beneath your feet has remained frozen for countless millennia. The permafrost extends deeper than the foundations of Hogwarts itself, creating a magical foundation unlike anywhere else on Earth. Here, in this realm of perpetual winter, magical energy moves with a different rhythm, flows with a different purpose, and reveals properties that challenge everything we thought we knew about the arcane arts. The cold itself becomes a living force in tundra magic, not merely an environmental condition to be endured, but a fundamental element to be embraced and understood. When you cast a spell in these frozen lands, you can feel the difference immediately. The magic seems to crystallize in the air, taking on a quality of permanence that is rarely achieved in warmer climates. Charms that might last mere hours in temperate regions can endure for seasons in the tundra, their energy preserved by the very cold that makes life so challenging for ordinary folk. This preservation effect extends far beyond simple spell duration. The tundra acts as a vast magical archive, storing echoes of ancient magic in its frozen depths. Wizards who have learned to listen can hear the whispers of spells cast centuries ago, their magical signatures locked in ice like voices trapped in amber. Archaeological expeditions to these regions often uncover more than ancient artifacts. They discover entire conversations, magical debates, and casting techniques preserved in the permafrost with perfect clarity. The relationship between magical energy and extreme cold reveals itself in countless fascinating ways. Wands crafted from woods that have endured Arctic conditions carry unique properties, their cores seeming to resonate with the deep, slow magic that permeates the tundra. Phoenix feathers from birds that have journeyed across polar regions develop an almost crystalline quality, while dragon heartstrings from cold-adapted species conduct magic with remarkable efficiency at low temperatures. But perhaps most remarkable is how the tundra transforms the very nature of magical focus and concentration. In temperate climates, magic often mirrors the bustling energy of spring growth or the fierce heat of summer storms. Tundra magic, by contrast, teaches patience and depth. Spells cast here require a different kind of concentration, one that matches the slow, inexorable power of glacial movement and the patient accumulation of snow over countless seasons. The magical practitioners who first settled these frozen lands discovered that their casting techniques needed complete revision. Quick, aggressive spellwork that served them well in warmer climates proved ineffective against the tundra's magical resistance. Instead, they learned to work with the natural rhythms of the frozen landscape, developing techniques that emphasized sustained magical pressure rather than sudden bursts of energy. Their magic became like the tundra itself, vast, enduring, and possessed of a power that built slowly but proved nearly impossible to break. Temperature gradients create unique magical phenomena that exist nowhere else in the wizarding world. Where warm magical energy meets the bitter cold of the deep tundra, aurora-like effects can manifest even during daylight hours. These magical light displays serve as more than mere spectacle. They represent visible manifestations of the boundary between different types of magical energy, creating opportunities for spellwork that bridges multiple magical traditions. The very air in tundra regions carries magical properties that influence every aspect of spellcasting. Each breath becomes visible in the cold, but for magical practitioners, these visible exhalations often carry traces of the magic they've recently performed. Experienced tundra wizards learn to read these magical breath clouds like others might read tea leaves, gaining insights into the effectiveness of their spells and the current state of their magical energy. Water magic takes on entirely new dimensions in the tundra, where the boundary between liquid and solid becomes a canvas for magical experimentation. Ice formations serve as both magical tools and repositories of power, their crystalline structures capable of storing and focusing magical energy with remarkable precision. The process of freezing can trap magical properties within ice, creating natural magical items that form spontaneously during certain weather conditions. The silence of the tundra contributes significantly to its magical properties. In the absence of the constant background noise found in more populated regions, magical energy seems to move more freely and with greater clarity. Spells cast in this profound quiet often achieve effects that would be impossible amid the magical interference of bustling wizarding communities. The silence itself becomes a component of tundra magic, with many spells requiring specific periods of absolute quiet to achieve their full potential. Seasonal variations in tundra magic follow patterns unknown in other climates. During the brief summer months, when the surface layer thaws but the permafrost remains, magical energy flows in unique patterns. The contrast between the warmed surface and the frozen depths creates magical currents that experienced practitioners learn to harness. These seasonal magical streams have powered some of the most impressive enchantments in wizarding history, their energy channeled into permanent magical constructions that continue to function long after their creators have passed on. The isolation of tundra regions has preserved magical techniques that have been lost elsewhere in the wizarding world. Protected by the harsh climate from outside influence, small communities of tundra wizards maintained magical traditions that trace their origins back to the earliest days of organized magical practice. These techniques, adapted over generations to work within the unique constraints of the frozen landscape, offer insights into fundamental magical principles that more advanced wizarding societies sometimes overlook in their pursuit of increasingly complex spellwork. As you contemplate this frozen realm, where magic takes on properties as enduring as the permafrost itself, where the very cold that challenges life becomes a source of magical strength, and where ancient techniques sleep in ice awaiting rediscovery, consider this question: what aspects of our own magical practice might benefit from the patience and permanence that tundra magic teaches? Chapter 2. Ancient Wizarding Settlements in Arctic Regions. Deep within the archives of forgotten civilizations, where parchment maps trace the boundaries of lands that time has nearly erased, we find evidence of magical communities that chose to make their homes in the most challenging environments our world has to offer. Tonight, we shall explore these remarkable settlements, where wizarding families carved out lives of extraordinary resilience in the endless embrace of ice and snow. The earliest recorded Arctic magical settlement, known to historians as Crystalheart, was established nearly 3,000 years ago on what is now the northern coast of Siberia. Archaeological evidence suggests that this community was founded not out of necessity or exile, but from a deliberate recognition of the tundra's unique magical properties. The founding families, whose names have been preserved in runic inscriptions found deep beneath the permafrost, spoke of visions that called them northward, dreams filled with images of magic that moved like glaciers, slow, powerful, and inevitable. Imagine walking through the remains of Crystalheart as they exist today, partially excavated by magical archaeologists who work only during the brief Arctic summer. The settlement's layout reveals a sophisticated understanding of magical architecture adapted to extreme conditions. Unlike the vertical construction favored in temperate climates, Crystal Heart was built largely underground, its main structures carved into the permafrost itself. The magical engineering required for such construction staggers the modern imagination, keeping excavated spaces from refreezing, while maintaining the structural integrity of the surrounding ice, required innovations in heating charms that wouldn't be matched by wizarding communities elsewhere for centuries. The residential areas of these ancient settlements tell stories of remarkable adaptation. Family dwellings were designed around central hearths that burned with magical flames capable of providing warmth without consuming traditional fuel. These enchanted fires, sustained by ambient magical energy drawn from the Aurora-rich atmosphere, could burn for decades without attention. The heat they produced was carefully regulated through a series of runic channels carved into the walls, distributing warmth evenly throughout living spaces while preventing any melting of the structural ice. Community spaces in Arctic settlements served purposes beyond simple gathering. The great halls discovered in multiple Arctic sites were designed as magical workshops where the entire community could participate in large-scale enchantments. These collaborative magical efforts were necessary for survival in the harsh environment. No single wizard, regardless of skill, could maintain all the protective spells required to sustain life in such extreme conditions. Working together, community members could weave protective barriers against blizzards, create magical food preservation systems, and maintain the complex network of warming charms that made their settlements habitable. The innovation demonstrated in Arctic magical architecture extends to their approach to privacy and personal space. In climates where survival depended on community cooperation, the challenge of maintaining individual magical practice while contributing to group efforts required careful balance. Settlement designs included private chambers where individual wizards could pursue personal magical development without interfering with community enchantments. These spaces were acoustically and magically isolated, preventing spell interference, while allowing rapid communication when community magical efforts required all available practitioners. Food production in Arctic settlements represents perhaps their greatest magical achievement. Without access to traditional agriculture, these communities developed techniques for magical food creation that surpassed anything achieved in more hospitable climates. Central kitchens contained permanent enchantments capable of transforming simple base ingredients, often nothing more than ice and air, into nourishing meals. The magical processes involved required deep understanding of transformation magic applied at the molecular level, techniques so advanced that modern magical nutritionists still study preserved samples of Arctic settlement food stores. The preservation methods developed by Arctic settlements extended far beyond simple food storage. These communities became repositories of magical knowledge, their techniques for preserving written materials, magical artifacts, and even live magical creatures setting standards that influenced magical preservation techniques worldwide. Libraries within Arctic settlements contained books and scrolls maintained in perfect condition for millennia, their preservation spells powered by the stable magical energy that permeated the tundra environment. Transportation networks between Arctic settlements required magical solutions to challenges unknown elsewhere in the wizarding world. Traditional magical transportation methods proved unreliable in extreme cold, leading to the development of specialized techniques adapted to Arctic conditions. Magical sleds capable of traversing vast distances without traditional propulsion, navigation enchantments that functioned despite magnetic interference from Aurora activity, and communication spells that could penetrate the magical static generated by extreme weather patterns. All these innovations emerged from the practical needs of maintaining contact across the sparse Arctic magical community. The social structures that developed in Arctic settlements reflected the unique demands of their environment. Leadership roles were typically shared among specialists in different aspects of survival magic. One individual might oversee heating and shelter enchantments, while another managed food production spells, and a third maintained communication and transportation magic. This distributed leadership model ensured that no single point of failure could threaten the entire community. while encouraging the development of deep expertise in specialized magical fields. Seasonal cycles in Arctic settlements followed patterns dictated by the extreme variations in daylight and weather conditions. During the endless night of Arctic winter, communities turned inward, focusing on magical research, artifact creation, and the deep meditative practices that tundra magic particularly favored. The continuous darkness proved conducive to certain types of magical study, particularly divination and theoretical magical research, that benefited from freedom from visual distractions. When the brief Arctic summer arrived, bringing continuous daylight, settlement activities shifted dramatically. This was the season for major construction projects, for gathering and preserving resources, and for the complex magical rituals that required sustained energy over extended periods. The midnight sun provided continuous power for solar-based magical techniques, while the surface thaw allowed access to materials and locations that remained frozen and inaccessible during winter months. The decline of Arctic magical settlements came not from any failure of their remarkable adaptive techniques, but from broader changes in the global wizarding community. As magical transportation improved and wizarding governments consolidated power in temperate regions, the advantages of Arctic living diminished. The isolation that had once protected these communities began to work against them, cutting them off from developments in magical theory and practice that were transforming wizarding society elsewhere. Yet the legacy of Arctic settlements continues to influence magical practice today. Their innovations in preservation magic, their techniques for collaborative spellcasting, and their deep understanding of environmental magical adaptation remain relevant to modern challenges. As contemporary wizarding communities face questions about sustainable magical practice and adaptation to changing environmental conditions, the wisdom preserved in Arctic settlement ruins offers valuable insights into magical living that works with rather than against natural forces. The archaeological exploration of Arctic settlements continues to yield discoveries that reshape our understanding of magical history. Recent excavations have uncovered evidence of trade relationships between Arctic communities and magical settlements as far away as the Mediterranean, suggesting networks of magical commerce and communication that span far greater distances and time periods than previously believed. These findings hint at a period of magical globalization far earlier than historical records indicate, when Arctic communities served as crucial links in worldwide networks of magical knowledge and resource exchange. As we consider these remarkable communities that chose the challenge of Arctic living and created magical innovations that continue to influence our practice today, we might wonder, what can we learn from these ancient practitioners about the relationship between environmental challenge and magical innovation, and how might their example guide us in developing magical solutions to the challenges we face in our own time. Chapter 3. The Magic of Aurora Phenomena. Above the silent tundra, where the dome of night sky stretches endless and unblemished by the glow of distant cities, celestial magic dances in curtains of ethereal light that have captivated magical practitioners for millennia. Tonight, we shall explore the profound connection between aurora phenomena and the deepest mysteries of magical energy, where the boundary between earth and heaven dissolves in ribbons of impossible color. The northern lights, or aurora borealis as they are known to Muggle science, represent far more than mere atmospheric display to those versed in magical theory. These shimmering veils of light serve as visible manifestations of the planet's magical field, interacting with cosmic magical forces that stream continuously from the stars above. When you witness an aurora display, you are observing one of nature's most spectacular demonstrations of magical energy in its purest form, unfiltered by human intervention or magical apparatus. Picture yourself standing beneath an active aurora, the temperature so cold that your breath forms clouds of crystalline vapor, while overhead the sky transforms into a canvas of moving light. The aurora's glow reflects off the snow around you, creating an otherworldly landscape where every surface seems to pulse with gentle luminescence. But for magical practitioners, the visual spectacle represents only the most obvious aspect of aurora phenomena. The invisible magical energies that create these displays offer opportunities for spellwork that exist nowhere else in the natural world. The relationship between aurora activity and magical enhancement has been documented by Tundra wizards for thousands of years. Spells cast during periods of strong aurora activity demonstrate increased power, extended duration, and enhanced precision that cannot be achieved under ordinary circumstances. The aurora acts as a natural magical amplifier, its energy fields interacting with and strengthening the magical forces that wizards channel through their wands and focus through their intent. Different colors within aurora displays correlate with different types of magical enhancement. The common green aurora, caused by oxygen interactions at lower altitudes, provides particular amplification for healing magic and protective charms. Healing spells cast under green aurora light often achieve results that would normally require much more powerful magic, while protective barriers created during green aurora activity can endure for months rather than the usual hours or days. The rarer red aurora, occurring at higher altitudes, resonates powerfully with transformation and transmutation magic. Wizards who have mastered the timing of their transfiguration work to coincide with red aurora displays report achieving permanent transformations that would normally require sustained magical effort over extended periods. The red light seems to stabilize the magical energy involved in changing one thing into another, creating results that endure long after the aurora itself has faded. Blue and violet aurora phenomena, the rarest and most spectacular of aurora colors, provide enhancement for the most advanced forms of magical practice. Divination performed under violet aurora light achieves clarity and accuracy that astounds even experienced seers, while complex charms requiring intricate magical coordination become surprisingly manageable when cast beneath blue aurora displays. These rare color variations occur unpredictably, often appearing for only brief periods, making them precious opportunities that experienced aurora mages learn to recognize and utilize. The predictive aspects of aurora phenomena have given rise to a specialized branch of magical meteorology practiced almost exclusively in Arctic regions. Aurora forecasters, wizards who dedicate their practice to understanding and predicting celestial magical displays, develop skills that combine elements of astronomy, divination, and theoretical magical energy analysis. Their predictions allow other magical practitioners to plan complex spellwork around periods of optimal aurora activity, timing major magical undertakings to coincide with the most favorable celestial conditions. Aurora magic requires techniques significantly different from conventional spellcasting. The energy involved in aurora phenomena moves in waves and pulses that magical practitioners must learn to synchronize with their own magical rhythms. Spells cast in harmony with aurora pulsations achieve enhanced effects, while magic attempted in opposition to the aurora's natural rhythms often fails entirely or produces unpredictable results. Learning to sense and match aurora rhythms requires years of practice and a deep understanding of both personal magical patterns and celestial energy flows. The collaborative magical potential of aurora phenomena extends beyond individual spellcasting enhancement. Groups of wizards working together during major aurora displays can achieve magical effects that surpass anything possible through ordinary group spellwork. The aurora provides a natural magical conductor that links the individual magical energies of group participants, creating unified magical efforts that function with unprecedented coordination and power. Historical records describe aurora-enhanced group rituals that created permanent magical landmarks, established protective wards covering vast territories, and even influenced weather patterns across entire continents. Seasonal variations in aurora activity create annual cycles that shape the magical calendar in Arctic regions. The aurora season, occurring primarily during the months of extended darkness, becomes a period of intensive magical activity when practitioners attempt their most ambitious projects. Spring and summer, when aurora activity diminishes, serve as periods of preparation and planning, when magical practitioners study their craft and gather the resources needed for major magical undertakings during the next aurora season. The interaction between aurora phenomena and other tundra magical elements creates opportunities for magical combinations found nowhere else in the wizarding world. Aurora energy interacting with the preserved magical signatures locked in permafrost can revive ancient spells and magical techniques, allowing contemporary practitioners to access magical knowledge from centuries past. Similarly, aurora displays occurring during specific weather conditions, particularly during blizzards or ice storms, create hybrid magical environments where weather magic and celestial magic merge in powerful and unpredictable ways. Divination practices adapted for aurora conditions have developed unique methodologies that take advantage of the enhanced clarity provided by celestial magical energy. Scrying performed using aurora-lit ice produces visions of remarkable accuracy and detail, while tarot readings conducted under aurora light often reveal connections and patterns that remain hidden under ordinary circumstances. Crystal ball divination, when the crystal is exposed to aurora energy before use, can provide glimpses of events occurring simultaneously in distant locations, effectively serving as a form of magical long-distance observation. The creation of magical artifacts during aurora displays results in objects with properties that cannot be duplicated under normal conditions. Wands crafted during periods of strong aurora activity often demonstrate enhanced magical conductivity and unusual resonance with their owner's magical signatures. Potions brewed under aurora light frequently develop potency levels far exceeding their normal effectiveness, while enchanted objects created during aurora displays tend to retain traces of celestial magical energy that enhance their performance for years after their creation. Communication magic achieves extraordinary range and clarity during aurora activity. Messages sent through magical means during aurora displays can reach destinations thousands of miles away with the same clarity as local communication, while magical transportation networks experience enhanced efficiency and reliability. Some historical accounts describe aurora-enhanced communication spanning between different continents, suggesting that strong aurora activity can create temporary magical links across vast distances. The preservation of aurora magical energy for use during non-aurora periods has challenged magical practitioners for generations. Various techniques for capturing and storing aurora energy have been developed, ranging from crystalline matrices that can hold aurora essence for brief periods to complex magical apparatus designed to collect and concentrate celestial magical forces. While none of these methods can fully replicate the power of working directly under active aurora displays, they allow practitioners to access diminished but still significant aurora enhancement during the extended periods when the lights themselves are absent. Modern magical research into aurora phenomena continues to reveal new aspects of celestial magical interaction. Recent studies suggest that aurora activity influences not only magical energy on Earth, but also affects magical communication with other magical communities that may exist beyond our planet. The implications of this research extend far beyond Arctic magical practice, potentially reshaping our understanding of magic's relationship with cosmic forces and the broader magical universe. As you imagine yourself beneath the dancing lights that connect earth and sky, where ancient magical forces paint temporary masterpieces across the darkness, and where spells achieve power that transcends ordinary limitations, consider this: how might our understanding of magic itself be transformed if we could learn to work more harmoniously with the natural magical forces that surround us, just as aurora practitioners have learned to dance with the lights above. Chapter 4. Magical Creatures of the Frozen Wilderness. In the vast stillness of the tundra, where snow-covered plains stretch beyond the horizon and the silence holds secrets older than recorded history, magical creatures have evolved adaptations that would seem impossible in any other environment. Tonight we venture into the hidden world of these remarkable beings, whose mastery of ice magic and survival techniques has shaped the very nature of tundra enchantment for millennia. The frost phoenix stands as perhaps the most magnificent example of magical adaptation to Arctic conditions. Unlike their fire-dwelling cousins who burst into flames upon death, frost phoenixes undergo a transformation of crystalline beauty when their time comes to renew. Their death brings not conflagration, but a gradual crystallization that spreads from their heart outward, transforming their entire form into an intricate ice sculpture of breathtaking delicacy. Within this crystal tomb, their essence remains preserved until the magical conditions align for their rebirth, a process that can take decades or even centuries in the patient rhythms of tundra time. Picture the moment of a frost phoenix's rebirth as Aurora light plays across the crystalline form. The ice begins to sing with harmonious tones that carry for miles across the frozen landscape, a magical melody that draws other tundra creatures from vast distances to witness the rare spectacle. As the crystal shell melts away, steam rises in clouds that shimmer with their own inner light, and from this magical mist emerges the reborn phoenix, its feathers now bearing patterns of silver and blue that mirror the ice formations of its Arctic home. The magical properties of frost phoenix feathers surpass even those of their fire-dwelling relatives in certain applications. These feathers, naturally infused with the preservation magic that characterizes tundra environments, serve as components in the most powerful protective charms and healing potions. A single tail feather from a frost phoenix can maintain a warming charm for an entire Arctic settlement through the longest winter, while phoenix tears collected during their crystallization process can heal injuries that have persisted for years. Arctic kelpies represent another fascinating example of magical adaptation to extreme environments. These creatures inhabit the partially frozen lakes and rivers that dot the tundra landscape, their forms shifting between ice and water with fluid grace. Unlike their temperate cousins who maintain consistently aquatic forms, Arctic kelpies can assume solid ice configurations during the deepest winter months, allowing them to survive in bodies of water that freeze completely solid. The hunting techniques of Arctic kelpies showcase magical camouflage taken to extraordinary levels. They position themselves as seemingly natural ice formations along shorelines or riverbanks, their magical emanations so perfectly mimicking natural ice that even experienced magical naturalists can pass within feet without detecting their presence. When prey approaches, often magical creatures seeking water during brief thaws, the kelpie's transformation from ice to liquid form happens with such speed that the transition appears to violate fundamental magical principles. Glacier bears, massive creatures whose fur appears white from a distance, but reveals deep blue undertones in closer examination, demonstrate perhaps the most sophisticated use of environmental magic among tundra fauna. These bears don't simply adapt to the cold, they actively manipulate ice and snow as tools in ways that suggest intelligence rivaling that of some magical humanoid species. They construct elaborate den systems within glacial formations, using controlled melting and refreezing techniques to create complex tunnel networks that can extend for miles beneath the ice. The magical relationship between glacier bears and their environment extends to their interaction with human magical practitioners. These creatures seem to recognize magical ability in humans and often establish territorial boundaries that account for wizarding settlements in their area. Historical records describe glacier bears actively assisting lost wizards by creating ice bridges across dangerous crevasses or providing directional guidance through their manipulation of snow formations. Snow serpents, despite their fearsome reputation in magical creature classifications, play crucial roles in maintaining the magical ecology of tundra regions. These creatures, which can reach lengths of 30 feet or more, move through snow with the same ease that ordinary serpents display in sand or soil. Their passage creates a network of tunnels beneath the snow surface that serve as highways for smaller magical creatures and influence the flow of magical energy across the landscape. The venom of snow serpents, rather than being purely destructive, contains compounds that can temporarily halt the magical aging process. This property has made snow serpent venom one of the most sought-after magical ingredients, though its collection requires negotiations with the serpents themselves rather than conventional capture techniques. Snow serpents demonstrate remarkable intelligence and have been known to trade venom for magical services, particularly healing magic that can benefit their community during harsh winter periods. Tundra sprites. The smallest of the Arctic magical creatures possess magical abilities that seem disproportionate to their tiny size. These creatures, no larger than a human thumb, can manipulate ice crystals with precision that allows them to create complex three-dimensional structures from simple snowflakes. Their architectural abilities have inspired human magical construction techniques, particularly in the creation of temporary magical structures that can be assembled quickly during emergencies. The social structures of tundra sprites reveal sophisticated magical cooperation. Entire colonies work together to create vast ice cities beneath the snow surface, their combined magical efforts producing architectural marvels that incorporate both functional spaces and artistic elements of stunning beauty. These sprite cities often serve as neutral meeting grounds where different Arctic magical creatures can interact safely. The sprite's territorial neutrality respected by even the largest and most powerful tundra inhabitants. Wendigo, the most feared of Arctic magical creatures, represent the dark potential of magical adaptation to extreme environments. These creatures, formed when magical practitioners become lost in the tundra, and allow the preservation magic of the environment to affect their own magical essence, serve as cautionary examples of the dangers inherent in tundra magic. The transformation into Wendigo status appears to be irreversible, the affected individuals becoming part of the tundra landscape itself. Their consciousness merged with the vast, patient intelligence of the frozen wilderness. The presence of Wendigo in an area can be detected through changes in local magical patterns that experienced practitioners learn to recognize. Protective measures against Wendigo encounters require understanding their origins as corrupted magical practitioners, with the most effective defenses involving magical techniques that reassert human magical identity against the assimilating influence of tundra preservation magic. Ice dragons, the apex magical predators of Arctic regions, demonstrate magical abilities that incorporate elements from multiple magical creature types. These dragons can assume forms of pure ice that allow them to merge with glacial formations, becoming virtually undetectable until they choose to reveal themselves. Their breath weapons don't produce fire like their temperate cousins, but instead create zones of magical cold so intense that they can freeze magical energy itself, creating areas where spellcasting becomes impossible. The hoards collected by ice dragons consist not of traditional treasure, but of preserved magical artifacts and knowledge that they gather from across the Arctic regions. These dragons serve as inadvertent guardians of tundra magical history, their collections often containing the only surviving examples of ancient Arctic magical techniques and artifacts. Scholars brave enough to negotiate with ice dragons for access to their hoards have made discoveries that revolutionized understanding of historical magical practice. The symbiotic relationships that develop between tundra magical creatures and the environment itself create ecological networks of remarkable complexity. Aurora foxes, whose fur changes color to match aurora displays, serve as living conduits for celestial magical energy, their presence enhancing aurora phenomena, while their movements across the landscape help distribute aurora-charged magical energy to areas that might not otherwise receive such enhancement. Seasonal migrations of tundra magical creatures follow patterns that human magical practitioners have learned to incorporate into their own magical calendars. The arrival of certain species signals optimal times for specific types of magical work, while the departure of others indicates periods when particular magical techniques should be avoided. These creature-based magical calendars have proven more accurate than traditional astronomical calculations for predicting optimal magical conditions in Arctic regions. The conservation efforts required to protect tundra magical creatures face unique challenges related to the creature's integration with magical environmental systems. Protecting these creatures requires preserving not just their physical habitat, but also the complex magical energy networks that sustain their specialized abilities. Modern magical conservation theory increasingly recognizes that tundra magical creatures and their environment form integrated magical systems that must be preserved as complete ecological units. As you envision these remarkable creatures that have mastered survival in the world's most challenging magical environment, each species, demonstrating unique adaptations that blend magic with environmental necessity. Consider this. What can we learn from these creatures about the relationship between magical adaptation and environmental harmony, and how might their example guide us in developing magical practices that work with, rather than against, the natural world? Chapter 5. Seasonal Magic and the Eternal Winter. Beyond the reaches of temperate climates, where winter is but a temporary visitor that yields to spring's renewal, lies the realm of eternal winter, a domain where the seasons flow in rhythms unknown to the magical practitioners of warmer lands. Tonight, we delve into the profound mysteries of seasonal magic, as it manifests in regions where winter reigns supreme, where the traditional wheel of seasons turns slowly if at all, and where magical energy accumulates in patterns that challenge our fundamental understanding of temporal magical forces. In the deepest Arctic regions, the concept of seasonal change takes on meanings that transcend the simple progression from winter to spring to summer and back again. Here, in lands where winter can extend for 10 months or more, seasonal magic operates according to subtler rhythms, variations in light, changes in aurora intensity, and fluctuations in the magical energy that flows through the frozen earth. These micro-seasons, invisible to those accustomed to dramatic seasonal shifts, create opportunities for specialized magical practices that exist nowhere else in the wizarding world. Imagine yourself experiencing the Arctic's version of spring, not the explosive emergence of life that characterizes temperate springs, but a gentle lengthening of days that brings the first aurora displays after months of their absence. The magical energy that has lain dormant through the darkest months begins to stir, not with the violent awakening of a temperate spring, but with the slow, deep power of glacial movement. This Arctic spring brings opportunities for magical workings that require gradual energy accumulation, spells that build their power over weeks rather than moments. The concept of deep magic emerges most clearly during the extended winter periods that characterize tundra regions. This phenomenon occurs when magical energy, rather than cycling through the rapid seasonal changes that refresh and renew magical fields in temperate climates, accumulates steadily over months or years of continuous winter conditions. Deep magic represents magical energy in its most concentrated and stable form, capable of powering spells that would be impossible under normal seasonal conditions. Deep magic manifests in various forms throughout the tundra landscape. Locations where magical energy has accumulated undisturbed for decades develop properties that seem to violate traditional magical principles. Time moves differently in deep magic zones, not stopping or reversing but flowing with a different quality that allows magical practitioners to accomplish work that would normally require years of effort in a matter of days. These temporal anomalies create opportunities for magical research and artifact creation that attract scholars from around the magical world. The hibernation magic that governs survival during extended Arctic winters requires techniques unknown in regions with shorter, less severe cold periods. Rather than the simple warming charms that suffice for temperate winters, Arctic survival demands magical approaches that work with the body's natural rhythms to enter states of reduced magical and physical activity. These hibernation techniques, developed over generations by tundra magical communities, allow practitioners to survive months of extreme conditions while maintaining minimal magical energy expenditure. Magical preservation during extended winter periods extends far beyond simple food storage or artifact protection. The deep magic that accumulates during long winters can preserve complex magical states, allowing spells to remain partially cast for months while their completion awaits optimal conditions. This technique of spell hibernation enables magical practitioners to begin complex magical workings during periods of abundant magical energy, then preserve their progress through difficult periods, completing their work when conditions again become favorable. The psychological effects of seasonal magic in eternal winter regions influence magical practice in ways that practitioners from temperate climates often struggle to understand. The sustained magical pressure of unending winter creates mental states that enhance certain types of magical work while making others nearly impossible. Meditation magic flourishes under these conditions, with practitioners achieving levels of mental clarity and focus that would be difficult to maintain during the distractions of changing seasons. Conversely, magic that depends on growth, change, or renewal faces significant challenges in eternal winter environments. Transformation magic requires careful adaptation to work within the preservation-oriented magical fields that characterize extended winter periods, rather than attempting to overcome the stabilizing influence of deep winter magic. Successful practitioners learn to work within its constraints, using the stable magical environment to achieve transformations of unprecedented precision and permanence. The social implications of seasonal magic in eternal winter regions shape community structures in profound ways. The extended periods of enforced proximity during long winters create opportunities for group magical practices that would be impossible during more active seasons. Entire communities can maintain shared magical workings for months at a time, their combined magical efforts sustained by the stable energy fields that characterize deep winter periods. Community warming projects represent perhaps the most impressive examples of extended group magic in Arctic regions. These collaborative spells, initiated at the beginning of winter and maintained through the combined efforts of all community magical practitioners, create protective zones of temperate climate that can sustain entire settlements through the harshest conditions. The magical coordination required for such projects demands social cooperation and magical discipline that few temperate communities ever develop. Divination practices adapted to eternal winter conditions tap into the preservative qualities of extended cold periods to access magical information that remains hidden during periods of seasonal change. The stability of deep winter magic allows for scrying sessions that can maintain focus for days or weeks, revealing patterns and connections that emerge only through sustained magical observation. These extended divination sessions often produce prophetic information of remarkable accuracy, their insights preserved by the same magical forces that maintain the eternal winter itself. The interaction between eternal winter magic and celestial phenomena creates some of the most spectacular magical events documented in wizarding history. When aurora displays coincide with periods of deep magic accumulation, the resulting magical amplification can create effects visible from hundreds of miles away. These events, known as winter miracles in magical folklore, have been credited with healing entire communities, restoring failing magical artifacts to full power, and even temporarily reversing aging in magical practitioners present during their occurrence. Magical artifact creation during eternal winter periods produces objects with properties that cannot be duplicated under normal seasonal conditions. The stable magical environment allows for crafting techniques that require sustained magical energy input over extended periods, while the preservative qualities of deep winter magic can lock favorable magical properties into artifacts permanently. Some of the most powerful magical items in existence were created during extended Arctic winters, their makers taking advantage of conditions that occur rarely even in eternal winter regions. The study of seasonal magical theory in eternal winter environments has revealed fundamental principles about the relationship between time and magical energy that challenge conventional magical understanding. Traditional seasonal magic theory assumes cyclical renewal of magical fields through regular seasonal changes, but eternal winter regions demonstrate that magical energy can exist in stable, non-cyclical patterns that accumulate rather than refresh. This discovery has implications for magical theory that extend far beyond Arctic applications. Agricultural magic adapted to eternal winter conditions represents one of the most challenging applications of environmental magical theory. Growing magical plants in regions where traditional seasons don't exist requires techniques that create artificial seasonal cycles through careful manipulation of magical energy patterns. These magical greenhouse environments, sustained by deep winter magic, can produce magical herbs and ingredients that develop properties impossible to achieve in naturally cycling seasonal environments. The end of eternal winter periods, when they do occur, creates magical events of extraordinary power and beauty. The release of accumulated deep magic, as natural seasonal cycles resume, produces spectacular displays of magical energy that can be observed from great distances. These transition beds offer unique opportunities for magical work that bridges the gap between eternal winter magic and conventional seasonal magic, creating possibilities for spells that incorporate the stability of deep winter magic with the renewal energy of returning seasons. Modern magical climate theory increasingly recognizes that eternal winter regions serve crucial roles in maintaining global magical stability. The deep magic that accumulates in these areas acts as a reservoir of stable magical energy that can influence magical climate patterns worldwide. Understanding these global magical connections has become essential for magical environmental protection efforts and for predicting long-term changes in magical energy availability across different climate zones. As we contemplate these vast frozen realms where winter extends beyond the boundaries of normal seasons, where magical energy accumulates in deep pools of power unknown in temperate lands, and where time itself seems to move according to different principles, consider this: how might our understanding of patience and persistence in magical practice be transformed by embracing the slow, deep rhythms that eternal winter teaches? And what wisdom might these extended seasons offer about the relationship between magical power and the passage of time? Chapter 6: Ice Magic and Crystalline Enchantments. Within the crystalline architecture of frozen water lies a magical medium of extraordinary complexity and beauty, where each ice formation serves as both canvas and tool for magical artistry that transcends mere spellcasting. Tonight, we explore the intricate world of ice magic, where wizards have learned to harness the geometric perfection of crystals and the transformative power of freezing to create enchantments that merge the precision of mathematics with the fluid grace of water's eternal dance. The fundamental principles of ice magic rest upon understanding water's unique magical properties as it transitions between states. Unlike other magical mediums that maintain consistent properties regardless of temperature, water's magical conductivity changes dramatically as it freezes, creating opportunities for magical manipulation that exist only during the transition from liquid to solid. The moment of crystallization becomes a window of magical possibility, where skilled practitioners can influence the formation of ice crystals to create structures that channel and focus magical energy with unprecedented precision. Imagine yourself witnessing a master ice sculptor at work, not carving existing ice, but directing its formation as water freezes under their magical guidance. Each ice crystal that forms responds to subtle magical influences, aligning according to patterns that the practitioner weaves into the freezing process. The resulting structures display geometric perfection that would be impossible to achieve through physical carving, their crystal lattices modified to serve as three-dimensional magical circuits that can store, channel, and amplify magical energy. The art of crystalline enchantment requires a deep understanding of crystal structure at the molecular level, knowledge that combines magical theory with natural philosophy in ways that challenge even the most learned practitioners. Each type of ice crystal formation, from the simple hexagonal patterns of snowflakes to the complex geometric structures that form under specific temperature and pressure conditions, offers different magical properties and applications. Master ice wizards developed the ability to recognize and create dozens of different crystal types, each optimized for particular magical purposes. Snowflake enchantment represents perhaps the most delicate and ephemeral form of ice magic, where practitioners work with individual ice crystals as they form naturally in the atmosphere. This technique requires extraordinary magical sensitivity and timing, as the practitioner must influence crystal formation during the brief moments when snowflakes take shape high in the clouds. Enchanted snowflakes can carry messages across vast distances, their magical properties protected by the preservative qualities of frozen water until they reach their intended recipients. The magical properties of enchanted snowflakes vary according to the specific patterns created during their formation. Six-pointed snowflakes excel at protective magic, their symmetrical structure naturally lending itself to barrier spells and defensive enchantments. 12-pointed snowflakes, much rarer and more difficult to create, can carry complex magical information, serving as frozen libraries that preserve entire spells or magical procedures in crystalline form. The most accomplished practitioners can create snowflakes with even more complex geometric patterns, though such work requires magical skill that few wizards ever achieve. Large-scale ice sculpture magic transforms entire glacial formations into magical constructs of tremendous power and permanence. These massive ice enchantments can serve as protective barriers for entire regions, their crystalline structures channeling natural magical forces to create effects that persist for centuries. The great ice barriers of northern Siberia, created by unknown ice wizards millennia ago, continue to function as protective enchantments that shield vast areas from magical and physical threats. The construction of large ice enchantments requires collaborative magic on an unprecedented scale, with multiple practitioners working together to coordinate the freezing and enchantment of enormous volumes of water. The magical coordination required for such projects demands not only individual skill in ice magic, but also the ability to synchronize magical efforts with other practitioners across extended periods. Historical accounts describe ice construction projects that required the sustained magical effort of entire communities for months or even years. Ice preservation magic extends the principles of crystalline enchantment to the protection and storage of magical materials and artifacts. Objects embedded within properly enchanted ice can remain perfectly preserved for indefinite periods, protected not only from physical decay, but also from magical degradation that would normally affect even the most powerful magical items. The preservation chambers discovered in ancient Arctic settlements contain magical artifacts that remain fully functional after thousands of years of ice storage. The technique of magical ice preservation requires precise control over crystal formation to ensure that the ice structure provides optimal protection for preserved materials. Different preservation requirements demand different crystal patterns. Organic materials require ice crystals that prevent cellular damage, while magical artifacts need crystalline structures that maintain their magical energy fields without interference. Master preservationists can create ice storage systems with multiple zones, each optimized for different types of preserved materials. Defensive ice magic harnesses the protective properties of crystalline structures to create barriers and shields of remarkable effectiveness. Ice barriers created through proper magical technique can resist not only physical attacks but also magical assaults. Their crystalline structure, designed to absorb and dissipate magical energy across the entire formation. These defensive structures can be created rapidly during emergency situations, though their maximum effectiveness requires careful planning and preparation. The mobility possible with ice magic allows for defensive applications unknown in other magical traditions. Ice platforms that can bear enormous weight while remaining responsive to magical command. Ice bridges that form instantaneously across chasms or dangerous terrain, and ice armor that provides protection while allowing complete freedom of movement. All these applications demonstrate ice magic's unique combination of structural strength and magical responsiveness. Offensive applications of ice magic focus on the rapid formation of crystalline structures that can deliver precisely controlled magical effects. Ice projectiles created through magical means can carry enchantments that activate upon impact, delivering everything from simple kinetic force to complex magical effects that influence the target's magical or physical condition. The geometric precision possible with ice magic allows for targeting accuracy that surpasses most other magical projectile techniques. The psychological effects of ice magic attacks often prove as significant as their physical impact. The sight of massive ice formations appearing instantaneously, reshaping themselves according to the attacker's will, and demonstrating the kind of environmental control that ice magic makes possible can demoralize opponents before any direct magical effect takes place. This psychological aspect of ice magic has made it particularly valued in magical conflicts, where intimidation proves as important as direct magical confrontation. Healing applications of ice magic utilize the preservative and purifying properties of properly enchanted ice to treat injuries and ailments that resist conventional magical healing. Ice that has been enchanted with healing properties can slow the progression of magical diseases, preserve damaged tissue while more complex healing magic is prepared, and provide pain relief that doesn't interfere with other magical treatments. Some healing techniques unique to ice magic can address chronic conditions that have proven resistant to other magical healing approaches. The diagnostic capabilities of ice magic offer healers tools for understanding injuries and illnesses that remain hidden from other examination techniques. Diagnostic ice formations can map magical energy flows within the body, revealing blockages or disruptions that indicate the source of magical ailments. This diagnostic ice slowly melts as it absorbs information about the patient's condition, creating patterns in the melt water that skilled healers learn to interpret. Artistic applications of ice magic create temporary masterpieces that demonstrate the aesthetic possibilities inherent in crystalline enchantment. Ice sculptures that respond to ambient magical energy by changing their form, crystal formations that produce musical tones when touched by light or magical energy, and ice gardens where each formation represents a different aspect of magical theory. These artistic works serve both aesthetic and educational purposes, making complex magical concepts accessible through visual and tactile experience. The ephemeral nature of ice art adds poignancy to these creations, their temporary existence emphasizing themes of beauty, change, and the cycles of creation and dissolution that characterize all magical work. Many ice artists deliberately design their works to transform as they melt, creating artistic experiences that evolve over time, their beauty dependent on witnessing the complete cycle from formation through dissolution. Modern applications of ice magic continue to expand as magical practitioners develop new techniques and applications. Magical refrigeration systems that maintain optimal temperatures for potion brewing and ingredient storage. Ice-based magical communication networks that can transmit information across vast distances, and magical manufacturing techniques that use controlled freezing and thawing cycles to create complex magical items. These contemporary applications demonstrate ice magic's relevance to modern magical life. Research into the theoretical foundations of ice magic continues to reveal new possibilities for crystalline enchantment applications. The discovery that different water sources produce ice with varying magical properties has opened new avenues for specialized ice magic, while studies of crystal formation under different magical influences suggest possibilities for ice enchantments that have never been attempted. The field of ice magic remains one of the most actively developing areas of magical research, as you envision the infinite possibilities contained within frozen water, where each crystal formation offers opportunities for magical artistry that combines precision with beauty, strength with flexibility, and permanence with graceful transformation. Consider this. How might the geometric perfection and transformative power of ice magic inspire us to find new ways of bringing structure and beauty to our own magical practice? And what lessons might the crystalline world teach us about the relationship between order and creativity in magical work? Chapter 7. Traditional Tundra Magical Practices. In the heart of winter's endless embrace, where ancient wisdom flows like slow-moving glaciers through generations of magical practitioners, we find ceremonial traditions that have remained unchanged for millennia. Tonight, we delve into the sacred practices that bind tundra communities together, rituals that transform the harsh isolation of Arctic life into profound spiritual and magical communion with forces greater than any individual practitioner could hope to command alone. The ritual of the eternal flame stands as the cornerstone of tundra magical tradition, a ceremony that transforms the simple act of maintaining warmth into a profound magical practice that connects each generation with those who came before and those yet to come. This sacred fire burns not with ordinary wood or magical fuel, but with the concentrated essence of community magical energy, each family contributing a portion of their magical strength to sustain the flame that protects them all. Picture yourself participating in the lighting ceremony that begins each winter season, as representatives from every household in the settlement gather in the central ceremonial space. The flame begins with a spark created, not by flint or magic, but by the focused will of the entire community, channeled through their most skilled magical practitioners. This communal ignition requires perfect synchronization of magical energy among all participants, a feat that can be achieved only by communities that have practiced together for years. The maintenance of the eternal flame throughout the winter months creates a rhythm of magical responsibility that structures the entire season. Each family takes turns feeding the flame with their magical energy, a process that requires not just individual magical strength, but careful coordination to ensure that the flame receives steady, consistent power. The flame responds to the magical health of the community, burning brighter when all members remain strong and healthy, dimming when illness or magical exhaustion affects any community member. The storytelling traditions that surround the eternal flame serve purposes far beyond simple entertainment during long winter nights. These narratives, passed down through generations with careful attention to every detail, serve as repositories of magical knowledge that preserve techniques, warnings, and wisdom that might otherwise be lost. The act of storytelling itself becomes a magical practice, with skilled narrators using their voices to weave protective spells around their listeners, ensuring that the knowledge contained in the stories becomes permanently etched in the memories of all who hear them. Each story in the traditional cycle serves specific magical and educational purposes. Tales of ancient magical techniques preserve knowledge of spells and practices that may be needed only rarely but prove essential when circumstances demand their use. Stories of magical disasters and their resolution serve as warnings about the dangers of Tundra magic, while providing guidance for handling similar situations. Narratives about successful magical communities offer models for cooperation and magical coordination that younger practitioners can emulate in their own work. The Aurora calling represents one of the most spectacular and spiritually significant ceremonies in Tundra magical tradition. This ritual, performed during the peak of Aurora season, attempts to establish communication with the cosmic magical forces that create the northern lights. The ceremony requires the participation of the entire community, their combined magical efforts reaching out to touch the vast energies that dance across the Arctic sky. Preparation for the Aurora calling begins weeks before the ceremony itself, with community members undergoing purification rituals designed to align their individual magical signatures with the celestial energies they hope to contact. These preparatory practices include fasting from certain magical activities, meditation exercises performed in harmony with Aurora rhythms, and the creation of ceremonial objects that can channel and focus the cosmic magical energy that the ritual seeks to access. The Aurora calling ceremony itself takes place during the most intense Aurora displays of the season, when the entire sky becomes a canvas of moving light that seems to respond to the magical efforts of the gathered community. Participants arrange themselves in patterns that mirror the geometric structures visible in the Aurora, their positions carefully calculated to create a human magical formation that can resonate with the celestial display above. The communication achieved during successful Aurora calling ceremonies provides guidance and insight that influences community decisions throughout the following year. The cosmic intelligence that manifests through Aurora phenomena offers perspectives on magical practice that transcend individual human understanding, providing warnings about potential dangers and guidance about optimal timing for major magical undertakings. This celestial wisdom becomes part of the community's collective magical knowledge, influencing their practices for generations. The ceremony of deep silence marks the transition into the deepest part of winter, when the community acknowledges the need to conserve magical energy for the most challenging months ahead. This ritual begins with the gradual reduction of all unnecessary magical activity, as community members learn to accomplish essential tasks through non-magical means whenever possible. The ceremony culminates in a period of complete magical silence that can last for weeks, during which the community's magical energy accumulates and strengthens. During the deep silence period, communication within the community relies on subtle non-magical signals and gestures that have been developed over generations of practice. This enforced silence creates opportunities for types of magical meditation and introspection that are impossible when magical energy flows freely through normal community activities. Many practitioners report that their most profound magical insights emerge during these periods of voluntary magical restriction, The breaking of the deep silence occurs when the community's accumulated magical energy reaches levels that require release to prevent dangerous magical pressure buildup. This moment, determined by the community's most sensitive magical practitioners, triggers a celebration that channels the stored magical energy into protective spells and beneficial enchantments that sustain the community through the remainder of winter. The magical release creates displays of community magic that rival Aurora phenomena in their beauty and power. Healing circles represent perhaps the most emotionally significant of Tundra magical traditions, bringing together the entire community to address injuries, illnesses, or magical ailments that affect any community member. These ceremonies recognize that in the isolated conditions of Arctic life, the magical and physical health of each individual affects the well-being of the entire community, making collective healing efforts essential for community survival. The magical techniques employed in healing circles differ significantly from individual healing magic practiced in temperate climates. Rather than relying on a single healer's magical ability, these ceremonies channel the collective magical energy of the entire community into healing efforts that can address conditions far beyond the power of any individual practitioner. The healing energy flows through carefully structured magical formations that allow multiple healers to work together without interfering with each other's efforts. The psychological and spiritual aspects of community healing circles often prove as important as their direct magical effects. The visible demonstration of community support and magical cooperation provides emotional healing that complements the magical restoration of physical health. Patients who participate in these ceremonies often report that the experience of receiving magical aid from their entire community creates lasting emotional bonds that strengthen their connection to the group and their commitment to its welfare. Naming ceremonies for children born during winter months incorporate magical practices that bind new community members to the protective magical networks that sustain Arctic settlements. These rituals go beyond simple magical blessing, actually integrating the child's developing magical signature into the community's collective magical identity. This integration ensures that the child will be able to participate fully in community magical practices as they mature, while providing immediate magical protection through their connection to the group. The naming process itself involves magical divination that seeks to identify names that will harmonize with the child's natural magical tendencies and their role within the community's magical ecosystem. This divination often reveals names that connect the child to significant magical events or patterns, creating personal identities that reflect their relationship to the larger magical forces that govern Tundra life. The chosen names become magical invocations that can provide protection and guidance throughout the individual's life. Coming-of-age ceremonies mark the transition of young community members from recipients of community magical protection to active participants in the magical work that sustains their settlement. These elaborate rituals test not only the individual's magical abilities, but also their understanding of community magical traditions and their commitment to the collective welfare that makes survival possible in Arctic conditions. The magical challenges presented during coming-of-age ceremonies require candidates to demonstrate competence in all aspects of community magical life, from contributing energy to collective spells to maintaining magical artifacts that serve community needs. The trials also test psychological readiness for the responsibilities of adult participation in community magical work, including the ability to sacrifice individual magical preferences for the benefit of the group when circumstances require such sacrifice. Seasonal transition ceremonies acknowledge the subtle changes that mark the passage of time in regions where dramatic seasonal shifts don't occur. These rituals help community members attune themselves to the gradual variations in magical energy that accompany changes in daylight, aurora activity, and atmospheric conditions. The ceremonies serve as magical calendars that help coordinate community activities with optimal magical conditions throughout the year. Modern adaptations of traditional Tundra magical practices continue to evolve as contemporary practitioners work to preserve ancient wisdom while adapting to changing circumstances. Urban magical communities in temperate climates have begun incorporating elements of Tundra ceremony into their own practices, finding that the emphasis on community cooperation and magical conservation offers valuable lessons for magical practitioners facing the challenges of modern magical life. As you envision these sacred traditions that transform the hardships of Arctic life into opportunities for profound magical communion, where individual magical practice merges with community spiritual experience, and where ancient wisdom guides contemporary magical work, consider this: how might the emphasis on collective magical responsibility and seasonal attunement that characterizes Tundra traditions inspire us to create stronger bonds within our own magical communities and develop more sustainable approaches to magical practice in our daily lives. Chapter 8: The Breath of Winter Winds. Across the endless expanses of frozen earth, where no obstacle breaks the horizon for hundreds of miles, the wind becomes more than mere moving air. It transforms into a living carrier of magical energy that connects distant lands and distant times in ways that challenge our understanding of space and magical communication. Tonight, we follow these Arctic winds on their journey across the tundra, exploring how they serve as highways for magical energy and messengers bearing enchantments from places beyond the reach of conventional magical travel. The great polar winds that sweep across tundra regions carry magical properties accumulated during their journey over thousands of miles of ice and snow. Unlike the brief gusts that characterize temperate climates, these winds maintain consistent direction and intensity for weeks or months at a time, their magical signature becoming increasingly concentrated as they traverse the unbroken magical landscape of the Arctic. By the time these winds reach human settlements, they bear magical energy that has been refined and purified by its passage across pristine wilderness. Imagine standing in the path of such a wind, feeling not just the physical sensation of cold air against your skin, but the magical current that flows within it like an invisible river. Experienced tundra practitioners learn to read these magical currents with the same skill that sailors read ocean waves, recognizing patterns that indicate the wind's origin, the magical energies it has encountered during its journey, and the opportunities it offers for magical work that would be impossible under still air conditions. The relationship between breath and magical energy takes on profound significance in Arctic conditions, where each exhalation becomes visible in the cold air, and where the rhythm of breathing must adapt to the thin, dry atmosphere of polar regions. Tundra magical practitioners have developed breathing techniques that synchronize personal magical energy with the natural rhythms of Arctic winds, creating a form of magical practice that treats the entire atmosphere as a vast magical instrument to be played through controlled respiration. These specialized breathing techniques require years of practice to master, as they demand precise control over both the physical act of breathing and the magical energy that breath can carry. Advanced practitioners can use their breath to send magical messages across vast distances, their exhalations carrying enchanted air that seeks out specific recipients hundreds of miles away. The magical signature of each practitioner becomes encoded in their breath, allowing for forms of identification and authentication that prove impossible to counterfeit. Weather magic in tundra regions operates according to principles unknown in temperate climates, where dramatic weather changes provide frequent opportunities for magical intervention. Arctic weather systems demonstrate tremendous power, but change slowly, requiring weather magic techniques that work with gradual atmospheric shifts rather than sudden magical alterations. The patience required for effective tundra weather magic mirrors the patience demanded by all aspects of Arctic magical practice. The most impressive applications of tundra weather magic involve the redirection and channeling of existing wind patterns, rather than the creation of new weather phenomena. Skilled weather workers can influence the path of major wind systems, guiding storms away from settlements, or directing beneficial weather patterns toward areas that need their magical energy. These techniques require magical strength that can be sustained over the days or weeks needed for atmospheric changes to manifest fully. Wind speaking represents one of the most challenging and rewarding disciplines within tundra magical practice, involving the ability to communicate directly with the atmospheric intelligences that govern weather patterns across the Arctic. These atmospheric entities, formed by the interaction of magical energy with vast weather systems, possess a form of consciousness that operates on temporal scales far exceeding human experience. Communication with wind spirits requires magical practitioners to adjust their perception of time to match the gradual rhythms of atmospheric change. Successful wind speakers report that atmospheric intelligences possess knowledge about weather patterns, magical energy flows, and geographical features extending across entire continents. These beings serve as living libraries of information about conditions in distant regions, making them invaluable sources of intelligence for communities that must plan their activities around weather patterns originating thousands of miles away. The information provided by wind spirits often proves more accurate than conventional weather prediction techniques. The magical properties of different types of Arctic winds create opportunities for specialized magical practices that take advantage of specific atmospheric conditions. Katabatic winds, flowing down from glacial highlands, carry the concentrated magical energy of high-altitude ice formations, making them ideal for preservation magic and protective enchantments. These winds can freeze magical energy into stable forms that resist change and degradation, creating spells with duration measured in years rather than hours. Chinook winds, warm currents that occasionally penetrate Arctic regions, bring magical energy from temperate climates that can temporarily transform the magical environment of tundra settlements. The arrival of Chinook winds creates brief windows of opportunity for magical techniques that normally require warmer climates, allowing tundra practitioners to perform transformative magic that would otherwise be impossible in Arctic conditions. Communities learn to recognize the approach of Chinook winds days in advance, preparing complex magical projects that can be completed only during these rare atmospheric events. The navigation techniques developed by tundra travelers rely heavily on reading wind patterns and their associated magical signatures. In regions where landmarks remain hidden beneath snow for most of the year, winds provide reliable directional information that can guide travelers across hundreds of miles of featureless terrain. The magical component of wind navigation allows for precision that surpasses even the most sophisticated non-magical navigation techniques. Magical cartographers working in Arctic regions have developed wind mapping techniques that chart not only the physical movement of air masses, but also the magical energy flows that accompany atmospheric circulation. These magical wind maps reveal patterns of energy movement that influence everything from optimal travel routes to the best locations for permanent settlements. The maps themselves serve as magical artifacts that can provide navigation assistance to travelers carrying them. Sound transmission through Arctic winds demonstrates acoustic properties that have no equivalent in temperate climates. The combination of cold air's enhanced sound conductivity with the magical energy carried by tundra winds creates communication possibilities that extend far beyond ordinary magical message systems. Voices carried by enchanted Arctic winds can maintain clarity and emotional content across distances that would render normal sound communication impossible. Musical magic performed in harmony with Arctic winds achieves effects that musicians in other climates struggle to replicate. Instruments designed to work with wind energy can produce sounds that seem to come from the atmosphere itself, rather than from physical sound sources. These wind instruments often incorporate materials that resonate with specific types of Arctic wind, creating music that changes its character according to current atmospheric conditions. The healing properties of certain Arctic winds provide therapeutic benefits that complement other forms of magical healing practiced in tundra regions. Winds that have passed over specific types of ice formations or magical mineral deposits can carry healing energies that prove effective against particular types of illness or injury. Healing practitioners learn to recognize therapeutic winds and guide their patients to exposure that maximizes the beneficial effects of wind-carried healing energy. Purification rituals incorporating Arctic wind energy achieve cleansing effects that surpass other purification techniques in both thoroughness and duration. The magical purity accumulated by winds during their passage across unspoiled wilderness can cleanse both physical contamination and magical corruption with remarkable effectiveness. These wind purification techniques prove particularly valuable for treating magical ailments that resist conventional magical healing approaches. The preservation of wind-carried magical energy for use during calm periods has challenged Arctic magical practitioners for generations. Various techniques for capturing and storing wind energy have been developed, ranging from wind traps that can hold small amounts of enchanted air to vast atmospheric collection systems that gather wind energy over extended periods. While none of these storage techniques can fully replicate the power of working directly with active winds, they provide access to wind magic during the still periods that occasionally occur even in normally windy Arctic regions. Divination practices that incorporate wind energy often achieve clarity and range that surpass other forms of magical foresight. The movement of winds across vast distances allows wind-based divination to access information from remote locations, while the temporal patterns of atmospheric circulation can provide insights into future weather and magical conditions. Wind divination requires practitioners who can interpret the subtle magical signatures carried by air currents, reading meaning in atmospheric patterns that remain invisible to those without specialized training. The integration of wind magic with other tundra magical disciplines creates hybrid techniques that demonstrate the interconnected nature of Arctic magical practice. Wind-enhanced ice magic can create formations that respond to atmospheric conditions, while wind-powered Aurora magic can influence celestial displays in ways that purely terrestrial magic cannot achieve. These combinations require practitioners who understand multiple magical disciplines and can coordinate their efforts with the natural rhythms of atmospheric circulation. Modern applications of wind magic continue to expand as contemporary practitioners discover new ways to harness atmospheric energy for magical purposes. Magical power generation systems that capture wind energy for later use. Atmospheric communication networks that provide instant contact across vast distances. Weather modification techniques that can influence climate patterns across entire regions. These contemporary applications demonstrate wind magic's relevance to modern magical challenges, while honoring the ancient wisdom of tundra practitioners who first learned to work with atmospheric forces. As you imagine yourself standing in the flow of these great Arctic winds, feeling the magical energy that has traveled across continents and through time to reach you, where each breath connects you to forces greater than individual understanding, and where the atmosphere itself becomes a medium for magical communion with distant places and distant possibilities. Consider this: how might we learn to work more harmoniously with the natural flows of energy that surround us in our daily lives, and what wisdom might the patient, persistent power of Arctic winds teach us about persistence and connection in our own magical practice? Chapter 9. Survival magic in harsh environments. When the temperature drops far below what human life can naturally endure, when blizzards erase all landmarks and transform the familiar landscape into an alien realm of wind and white, survival depends not merely on magical knowledge, but on magical techniques that have been refined through generations of life or death necessity. Tonight we explore the essential survival magic that means the difference between life and death in the world's most unforgiving magical environment, where every spell cast might be the one that ensures another day of existence. The foundational survival spell of all tundra magic is the personal warming charm, but the Arctic version bears little resemblance to the simple heating spells taught in temperate magical schools. Tundra warming magic must operate efficiently for extended periods, while consuming minimal magical energy, maintain consistent temperature regulation despite extreme external cold, and provide protection against the unique dangers of magical energy freezing that can occur when standard warming spells fail in extreme conditions. Imagine yourself learning to cast a proper Arctic warming charm, feeling the magical energy settle, not just around your body, but actually integrating with your natural magical aura to create a sustainable heating system that works with, rather than against, your body's own temperature regulation. The spell begins not with a burst of magical heat that would quickly exhaust your magical reserves, but with a gentle magical influence that encourages your body to generate and retain heat more efficiently, while providing just enough external magical warmth to compensate for the harsh environment. The advanced warming techniques used by experienced tundra travelers incorporate multiple layers of magical protection that activate automatically as conditions worsen. The outermost layer provides general climate control, maintaining a comfortable temperature bubble around the caster during normal Arctic conditions. The middle layer activates during storms or extreme temperature drops, providing additional insulation and protection against wind chill effects that can overwhelm basic warming spells. The innermost layer serves as emergency protection, maintaining core body temperature even if the outer magical layers fail completely. Shelter creation magic in tundra environments must account for challenges unknown in temperate climates, where suitable building materials exist in abundance and moderate weather conditions allow for gradual construction processes. Arctic shelter magic requires techniques that can create protective structures rapidly using only the materials immediately available, typically snow, ice, and wind, while ensuring that these emergency shelters provide adequate protection against conditions that can kill within hours. The magical techniques for emergency shelter construction begin with snow transmutation spells that can transform loose snow into building blocks with the structural integrity of stone, while retaining snow's excellent insulation properties. These transmuted snow blocks can be shaped and fitted together through additional magic that creates joints stronger than traditional construction techniques could achieve. The resulting shelters provide protection that can sustain life during the worst Arctic storms, while requiring only materials that exist wherever snow falls. Advanced shelter magic incorporates heating systems that draw energy from the surrounding environment, rather than depleting the occupant's magical reserves. These environmental heating spells tap into the vast thermal mass of the earth beneath the permafrost, channeling geothermal energy upward through carefully constructed magical conduits that can warm an entire shelter, using energy that would otherwise remain inaccessible. The magical engineering required for such systems represents some of the most sophisticated environmental magic practiced anywhere in the wizarding world. Food creation and preservation magic adapted for Arctic conditions addresses the challenge of maintaining nutrition when conventional food sources remain unavailable for months at a time. Unlike the food multiplication spells that work well in temperate climates where base ingredients exist in abundance, Arctic food magic must create nourishing meals from minimal starting materials, while ensuring that the magical nutritional content provides the extra energy needed for survival in extreme cold. The magical processes involved in Arctic food creation require deep understanding of nutritional transformation magic that can convert simple substances into complex, balanced meals. Ice and snow can be transformed into broths rich with the nutrients needed for cold weather survival, while small amounts of preserved ingredients can be multiplied and enhanced to provide complete nutrition for extended periods. These food creation techniques require careful magical control to ensure that the resulting meals provide both immediate nourishment and the long-term nutritional support needed for extended Arctic survival. Preservation magic for Arctic conditions extends far beyond simple food storage to encompass the protection of all materials and supplies that survival depends upon. Magical tools and equipment must be protected against the extreme temperature variations that can shatter conventional materials, while clothing and protective gear require preservation spells that maintain their insulating properties despite constant exposure to harsh conditions. The magical preservation techniques developed for Arctic use create protective barriers that prevent materials from degrading while allowing them to function normally under extreme conditions. Metal tools enchanted with Arctic preservation spells remain flexible and strong despite temperatures that would make ordinary metal brittle and prone to breaking. Fabrics protected by tundra preservation magic maintain their warmth and weather resistance indefinitely, providing reliable protection that can mean the difference between survival and death during unexpected weather emergencies. Navigation magic for Arctic travel must overcome challenges that don't exist in other environments, where landmarks remain visible and magnetic compass readings provide reliable directional information. Arctic navigation requires magical techniques that can determine direction and distance despite the visual uniformity of snow-covered landscapes and the magnetic anomalies that characterize polar regions. The magical compass techniques used by Arctic travelers incorporate multiple navigation systems that provide redundant directional information when any single system fails. Stellar navigation magic that works despite aurora interference. Landmark recognition spells that can identify buried or snow-covered reference points, and distance measurement techniques that remain accurate across the vast scales of Arctic travel. All these navigation aids must function reliably under conditions that would disable conventional magical navigation tools. Emergency magical techniques for Arctic survival address life-threatening situations that require immediate magical intervention to prevent death from exposure, injury, or magical energy depletion. These emergency spells must work even when the practitioner's magical energy has been severely depleted by survival efforts, requiring techniques that can draw power from environmental sources, or that achieve maximum effect with minimal magical energy expenditure. Hypothermia reversal magic represents perhaps the most critical of Arctic emergency techniques, as it addresses the most common cause of death in Arctic environments. This magic must work rapidly to restore normal body temperature, while avoiding the shock that can result from too rapid rewarming. The spell requires precise magical control to gradually restore circulation and heat generation, while protecting vital organs from the temperature fluctuations that accompany recovery from severe hypothermia. Frostbite treatment magic addresses tissue damage that occurs when extreme cold causes cellular destruction in exposed body parts. Unlike conventional healing magic that works with living tissue, frostbite treatment must first restore viability to damaged cells before attempting to heal the injury. This two-stage magical process requires techniques that can revive apparently dead tissue while providing the enhanced healing needed to restore full function to frostbite-damaged areas. Magical energy conservation techniques become essential for Arctic survival, where the increased magical energy demands of constant survival magic can quickly exhaust even experienced practitioners. These conservation techniques teach efficient spellcasting methods that achieve necessary survival effects while minimizing magical energy expenditure, allowing practitioners to maintain essential survival magic for extended periods without depleting their magical reserves. The energy conservation methods used by Arctic survivors include shared magical techniques that allow groups of travelers to combine their magical efforts for maximum efficiency. Community warming spells that heat entire groups more efficiently than individual warming charms. Group shelter magic that creates protection for multiple people using less total energy than separate individual shelters. And collaborative navigation magic that reduces the magical burden on any single group member while providing more reliable direction finding than individual navigation attempts. Rescue magic for Arctic conditions must overcome the communication and transportation challenges that make conventional rescue operations extremely difficult in polar regions. Distress signals that can penetrate Arctic storms and reach rescuers hundreds of miles away. Location beacons that provide precise positioning information despite magnetic interference. And emergency transportation magic that can bring help across vast distances in minimal time. These rescue techniques often determine whether survival becomes possible when individual survival magic proves insufficient. The magical communication techniques used for Arctic rescue can transmit not just calls for help but detailed information about the nature of the emergency and the specific assistance needed. These enhanced distress signals can carry medical information about injuries or illness, location data that guides rescuers to exact positions, and environmental information that helps rescue teams prepare for the conditions they will encounter during rescue operations. Water location and purification magic addresses the paradox of Arctic survival, where water exists everywhere in the form of ice and snow but may not be safe for consumption without proper magical treatment. Ice and snow from different sources can contain magical contamination that makes them unsafe for drinking, while the energy required to melt sufficient water for survival needs can quickly deplete magical reserves, if not handled efficiently. Magical water purification techniques for Arctic conditions must address contamination types that don't exist in temperate climates, including magical pollution that can accumulate in ice over long periods, and atmospheric contamination that affects precipitation in polar regions. The purification magic must work efficiently to avoid excessive energy consumption while ensuring that the resulting water provides safe hydration that supports rather than drains the survivor's magical and physical energy. Modern improvements to traditional Arctic survival magic continue to evolve as contemporary magical practitioners adapt ancient techniques to new challenges and opportunities. Enhanced survival spells that incorporate modern understanding of hypothermia and cold injury. Oved shelter magic that takes advantage of new materials and construction techniques. And updated navigation magic that works with contemporary magical transportation systems. These improvements demonstrate that Arctic survival magic remains a living tradition that continues to develop and improve. Training programs for Arctic survival magic now incorporate simulation techniques that allow practitioners to develop essential skills without exposing themselves to actual life-threatening conditions. These training methods use controlled magical environments that replicate Arctic conditions while providing safety measures that prevent actual injury or death during the learning process. The combination of traditional survival wisdom with modern training techniques produces Arctic survival specialists whose skills exceed those of previous generations. As you contemplate the essential magic that stands between life and death in the world's most challenging environment, where each spell carries the weight of survival, and where magical knowledge becomes literally a matter of life and death, consider this. How might the focused, practical approach to magic that Arctic survival DIMA inspire us to identify and develop the essential magical skills that we need for navigating the challenges in our own lives? And what can we learn from survival magic about the relationship between magical preparation and confidence in facing difficult circumstances? Chapter 10. The Silence of Snow and Magical Meditation. In the profound quiet that blankets the snow-covered tundra, where the absence of sound becomes almost tangible, and where silence takes on qualities that transform it from mere emptiness into a positive force for magical development, we discover meditation practices that exist nowhere else in the wizarding world. Tonight, we explore how the unique acoustic environment of Arctic regions creates opportunities for magical introspection and spiritual development that have shaped the deepest traditions of tundra magical practice for thousands of years. The silence of fresh snowfall creates an acoustic environment unlike anything experienced in temperate climates, where background noise from wind, water, and living creatures provides a constant soundtrack that most inhabitants no longer consciously notice. In the depths of Arctic winter, snow accumulates to such depths that it absorbs virtually all sound, creating zones of silence so complete that practitioners report being able to hear their own heartbeat and the subtle movement of magical energy through their bodies. Imagine yourself sitting in perfect stillness within this cocoon of silence, where every breath becomes audible, and where the smallest movement seems amplified by contrast with the absolute quiet surrounding you. In this environment, meditation takes on qualities that prove impossible to achieve in noisier settings. The external silence allows practitioners to perceive internal sounds and sensations that remain hidden beneath the normal acoustic background of daily life, creating opportunities for self-awareness and magical sensitivity that exceed anything possible in conventional meditation practices. The acoustic properties of snow-covered landscapes provide natural sound dampening that creates perfect conditions for magical meditation practices requiring absolute quiet. Unlike artificial silence created by magical means, which often carries the magical signature of the silencing spells used to create it, natural snow silence provides a neutral acoustic environment that doesn't interfere with the subtle magical energies that advanced meditation seeks to perceive and manipulate. The psychological effects of extended silence prove as significant as its acoustic properties for magical development. In regions where profound quiet can persist for days or weeks at a time, meditation practitioners develop tolerance for silence that allows them to maintain focus for extended periods without the restlessness that affects those accustomed to constant background stimulation. This enhanced capacity for sustained attention translates directly into improved magical focus and the ability to maintain complex spells for much longer periods than practitioners trained in noisier environments. Breathing meditation in Arctic conditions incorporates the visible nature of exhalation in cold air as a focusing technique that adds visual elements to traditional breath awareness practices. Each exhalation becomes a visible cloud that practitioners can observe and use as a focal point for concentration, while the rhythm of breathing naturally slows in cold conditions, encouraging the deep, measured breathing patterns that optimize magical energy circulation throughout the body. The integration of breath visibility with traditional meditation techniques creates hybrid practices unique to Arctic conditions. Practitioners learn to observe not just the physical clouds of their breath, but also the magical energy patterns that become visible within these exhalations under certain conditions. Advanced practitioners can actually see their magical aura reflected in their breath clouds, providing immediate feedback about their current magical state and the effectiveness of their meditation practice. Temperature awareness meditation utilizes the constant presence of cold as a meditation object, developing practitioners' ability to maintain mental equilibrium despite physical discomfort. Rather than fighting against the cold or using magic to eliminate it completely, these meditation techniques teach practitioners to accept cold as a natural condition, while maintaining inner warmth through mental discipline and controlled magical energy circulation. The mental discipline developed through cold meditation proves invaluable for magical practice under stress, where practitioners may need to maintain spell focus despite physical discomfort, emotional pressure, or environmental challenges. The ability to remain mentally centered while experiencing physical cold translates into enhanced performance in any magical situation where external conditions threaten to disrupt concentration and magical control. Silence meditation practices, specifically designed for Arctic conditions, take advantage of the depth and quality of natural quiet to develop hearing sensitivity that approaches magical levels. Practitioners learn to detect sounds too subtle for ordinary perception, developing auditory awareness that can detect approaching weather changes, the movement of distant magical creatures, or the subtle audio signatures that indicate changes in local magical energy patterns. The enhanced hearing sensitivity, developed through Arctic silence meditation, provides practical benefits that extend far beyond meditation practice itself. Practitioners who have mastered these techniques can detect dangers approaching from great distances, recognize the audio signatures of different types of magical phenomena, and even use sound-based navigation techniques that work when visual navigation becomes impossible during storms or extended darkness. Group meditation practices adapted for Arctic conditions create opportunities for shared consciousness experiences that prove difficult to achieve in less conducive environments. The profound silence and isolation of Arctic settings allow groups of practitioners to synchronize their mental states more easily, creating collective meditation experiences where individual consciousness boundaries become permeable and participants can share insights and perceptions directly. The group meditation techniques developed in Arctic communities serve practical as well as spiritual purposes, creating mental connections between community members that enhance cooperation and coordination in daily survival activities. These shared consciousness experiences allow for nonverbal communication that proves invaluable during hunting expeditions, construction projects, or emergency situations where normal communication might be impossible or inadequate. Seasonal meditation cycles follow the natural rhythms of Arctic light and darkness, with different meditation practices optimized for the varying conditions throughout the year. Summer meditation practices take advantage of continuous daylight to develop sustained awareness techniques that can maintain meditative states for days at a time, while winter meditation works with extended darkness to develop introspective practices that enhance self-knowledge and inner vision. The transition periods between extreme light and extreme darkness provide unique opportunities for meditation practices that bridge different states of consciousness. These liminal meditation periods, occurring during the brief Arctic spring and autumn, allow practitioners to integrate the insights gained during summer's expanded awareness with the deep introspection developed during winter's inward focus. Magical energy meditation specific to Arctic conditions teaches practitioners to perceive and work with the unique magical energy patterns that characterize tundra environments. The stable, slowly changing magical fields of Arctic regions provide ideal conditions for developing sensitivity to subtle magical energy fluctuations that would be overwhelmed by the more dynamic magical environments of temperate climates. Advanced practitioners of Arctic magical energy meditation report the ability to sense magical energy patterns extending across vast distances, their enhanced sensitivity allowing them to detect magical phenomena occurring hundreds of miles away. This long-range magical perception proves invaluable for weather prediction, navigation, and early warning of approaching magical dangers or opportunities. Walking meditation adapted for snow-covered terrain creates mindfulness practices that incorporate the physical challenges of Arctic travel with traditional meditation techniques. The careful attention required for safe movement across potentially dangerous snow and ice surfaces naturally promotes the kind of moment-to-moment awareness that forms the foundation of effective meditation practice. The rhythm of snowshoe or ski travel provides natural pacing for walking meditation that encourages sustained awareness over long periods. The repetitive motion of Arctic travel, combined with the visual simplicity of snow-covered landscapes, creates ideal conditions for maintaining meditative awareness during physical activity, allowing practitioners to combine transportation with spiritual practice in ways that prove impossible in more complex environments. Contemplative practices based on observation of snow and ice formations utilize the infinite variety of natural ice and snow structures as subjects for meditation that develop visual awareness and appreciation for natural beauty. Each snowflake, ice crystal, and snow formation offers unique patterns that can serve as focal points for concentration, while teaching lessons about impermanence, uniqueness, and the relationship between simplicity and complexity. The artistic meditation practices that emerge from contemplation of snow and ice often inspire creative work that reflects the mathematical precision and organic beauty of crystalline formations. Practitioners who develop deep appreciation for ice and snow aesthetics through meditation often become skilled in ice sculpture, snow architecture, or other artistic expressions that celebrate the beauty of frozen water in its many forms. Magical research meditation combines traditional contemplative practices with systematic investigation of magical phenomena unique to Arctic environments. The stable conditions and extended periods of quiet available in Arctic regions provide ideal circumstances for sustained magical research that requires deep concentration and freedom from external distractions. The insights gained through magical research meditation in Arctic conditions often lead to theoretical breakthroughs that advance understanding of fundamental magical principles. The unique magical environment of tundra regions provides natural laboratories for investigating magical phenomena that cannot be studied effectively in other climates, while the enhanced focus possible through Arctic meditation allows for sustained research efforts that exceed anything possible in busier environments. Integration meditation practices help practitioners assimilate the insights and experiences gained through Arctic meditation into their daily magical practice and personal development. These integration techniques ensure that the enhanced awareness and magical sensitivity developed through specialized Arctic practices translate into improved performance and understanding in all aspects of magical work. Modern adaptations of traditional Arctic meditation techniques make these practices accessible to practitioners who cannot travel to actual Arctic environments, using controlled magical environments, sensory deprivation techniques, and other methods to simulate the conditions that make Arctic meditation so effective. These adaptations allow contemporary practitioners to benefit from ancient wisdom while adapting traditional techniques to modern circumstances and needs. As you envision yourself surrounded by the profound peace of Arctic silence, where each moment of stillness deepens your connection to the subtle magical forces that flow beneath the surface of ordinary awareness, where the absence of external distraction allows for inner discoveries that transform understanding and magical ability. Consider for this. How might we create islands of silence and contemplative space within our own busy lives? What wisdom might the patient, deep awareness cultivated through Arctic meditation offer about finding inner peace and magical clarity amid the complexities of contemporary magical practice? Chapter 11. Connections to Global Magical Networks. Far from being isolated realms cut off from the broader magical world, the Tundra regions serve as crucial nodes in global networks of magical energy that connect the most remote Arctic settlements to magical communities thousands of miles away in temperate and tropical climates. Tonight, we explore the invisible pathways through which Tundra magic influences magical practice across the world, and the ways in which Arctic magical techniques have shaped the development of international magical cooperation and knowledge exchange. The magical energy pathways that flow through Tundra regions follow patterns established by the planet's fundamental magical field structure, with Arctic areas serving as both sources and conduits for magical energies that affect weather patterns, aurora phenomena, and environmental magical conditions across multiple continents. These energy flows create a network of magical influence that extends far beyond the physical boundaries of Arctic regions, making Tundra magic a significant factor in global magical climate and environmental conditions. Imagine the vast magnetic field lines that guide aurora displays, extending not just through the atmosphere, but deep into the magical energy matrix that surrounds our planet, creating channels through which magical energy flows between Arctic regions and distant magical communities. These magical pathways carry not just energy but information, techniques and influences that connect Arctic practitioners to their colleagues in tropical rainforests, temperate valleys, and mountain highlands across the globe. The preservation qualities inherent in Tundra magic create repositories of magical knowledge that serve international magical communities as libraries and archives of techniques that have been lost or forgotten in other climates. Magical expeditions from temperate magical institutions regularly travel to Arctic regions to access preserved magical knowledge that exists nowhere else, while Arctic communities benefit from the exchange by gaining access to contemporary magical developments and theoretical advances achieved in more populous magical centers. Historical trading relationships between Arctic communities and magical settlements in warmer climates reveal economic networks that operated across vast distances long before modern magical transportation made such trade routine. Archaeological evidence suggests that magical materials unique to Arctic environments, preserved magical specimens, aurora-charged crystals, ice magic artifacts, were traded for tropical magical ingredients, temperate climate magical tools, and theoretical magical knowledge from established magical centers. The specialized magical materials that Arctic regions provide to global magical markets demonstrate the unique contributions that tundra environments make to international magical commerce. Frost phoenix feathers, aurora-charged magical crystals, ice that has absorbed magical energy over centuries, and snow that has been enhanced by contact with particular magical phenomena. These materials prove essential for magical applications that cannot be achieved using substances available in other climates. Communication networks that connect Arctic settlements to distant magical communities utilize the unique properties of aurora phenomena and atmospheric magical energy to achieve transmission ranges that exceed conventional magical communication systems. Messages sent through aurora-enhanced communication networks can reach destinations on other continents with the same clarity and speed as local magical communication, creating opportunities for real-time consultation and collaboration between Arctic practitioners and their colleagues worldwide. The development of international magical communication protocols specifically designed for Arctic conditions has influenced communication standards used throughout the global magical community. The error correction techniques developed to ensure message integrity despite Aurora interference. The compression methods needed to transmit complex magical information through atmospheric magical channels, and the authentication systems required to verify message sources across vast distances. All these innovations have found applications in magical communication systems far beyond Arctic regions. Educational exchange programs between Arctic magical communities and temperate magical institutions create opportunities for knowledge transfer that benefit both Arctic practitioners and their international colleagues. Students from temperate magical schools who study in Arctic environments gain exposure to magical techniques and environmental magical theory that cannot be taught effectively in other climates, while Arctic students who visit temperate institutions bring unique perspectives and specialized knowledge to their host communities. The theoretical contributions that Arctic magical practice makes to international magical theory extend far beyond the practical applications of Tundra magic techniques. The patience, precision, and environmental awareness required for successful Arctic magic have influenced magical philosophical movements worldwide, while the collaborative approaches necessary for Arctic community survival have inspired new models for magical cooperation and resource sharing in other magical communities. Research collaborations between Arctic magical practitioners and international magical institutions focus on questions that require the unique experimental conditions available only in tundra environments. Studies of magical energy preservation, investigations into the relationship between environmental stability and spell duration, and research into the effects of extreme conditions on magical ability. These research programs require Arctic conditions while producing results that advance magical understanding globally. The magical weather prediction networks that originate in Arctic regions provide early warning systems for magical communities worldwide, as weather patterns that begin in polar regions often influence magical conditions across multiple climate zones as they develop and move toward temperate areas. Arctic weather magic practitioners serve as the first line of observation for magical weather phenomena that may affect magical communities thousands of miles from their point of origin. Disaster response networks that connect Arctic magical communities to international magical emergency services demonstrate the importance of global magical cooperation for survival in extreme environments. When Arctic communities face emergency situations beyond their capacity to handle locally, international magical rescue and relief organizations provide assistance that can mean the difference between survival and catastrophe for isolated Arctic settlements. The specialized expertise that Arctic magical practitioners contribute to international disaster response efforts proves invaluable when magical emergencies occur in extreme environments anywhere in the world. Alpine rescue operations, polar exploration support, and magical emergency response in other harsh environments all benefit from techniques and knowledge developed through generations of Arctic magical practice. Cultural exchange programs that bring Arctic magical traditions to international audiences help preserve and propagate traditional magical knowledge that might otherwise be lost, as Arctic communities modernize and integrate more closely with global magical society. These cultural preservation efforts ensure that traditional Arctic magical techniques remain available for study and application by future generations of magical practitioners worldwide. The influence of Arctic magical aesthetics on international magical art and architecture demonstrates how the beauty and functionality of traditional Arctic magical techniques inspire creative work in other climates. Ice magic techniques adapted for temperate climates, architectural principles derived from Arctic settlement design, and artistic traditions inspired by Aurora phenomena. These cultural contributions enrich magical traditions worldwide while honoring their Arctic origins. Environmental magical monitoring networks that originate in Arctic regions provide early warning systems for global magical environmental changes that affect magical practice across all climate zones. The stability of Arctic magical environments makes them ideal locations for detecting subtle changes in global magical energy patterns, while the sensitivity developed by Arctic practitioners through their environment makes them particularly skilled at recognizing and interpreting environmental magical indicators. Conservation efforts aimed at protecting Arctic magical environments Recognize that these regions serve as crucial components of global magical ecology, their preservation essential not just for Arctic magical communities, but for maintaining magical environmental stability worldwide. International magical conservation organizations work with Arctic communities to protect magical ecosystems whose health affects magical conditions far beyond Arctic boundaries. The magical materials research conducted in Arctic environments contributes to global advancement in magical artifact creation, potion brewing, and magical construction techniques. The unique properties of materials that can be produced only under Arctic conditions lead to innovations in magical technology that benefit magical communities worldwide, while research into Arctic magical materials often reveals new applications for more common magical substances. International magical law and treaty systems increasingly recognize the special status of Arctic magical regions as global magical resources whose protection and management require international cooperation. Legal frameworks that govern access to Arctic magical resources, protocols for sharing magical knowledge discovered in Arctic regions, and agreements for mutual assistance during Arctic magical emergencies. These legal structures reflect the growing recognition of Arctic regions' importance to global magical welfare. The migration patterns of magical practitioners between Arctic and temperate regions create ongoing cultural and knowledge exchange that ensures Arctic magical traditions remain connected to global magical development, while temperate magical communities benefit from Arctic innovations and perspectives. These migration flows help prevent the isolation that could lead to stagnation in Arctic magical practice, while ensuring that valuable Arctic knowledge reaches international audiences. Modern technology adapted for Arctic magical applications demonstrates how contemporary innovations can enhance traditional magical techniques without replacing their essential character. Magical communication devices designed for Arctic conditions, transportation systems that incorporate traditional Arctic travel, low wisdom with modern magical propulsion, and environmental monitoring equipment that combines magical sensitivity with technological precision. These hybrid systems show how tradition and innovation can work together to strengthen both local and global magical capabilities. Climate change considerations in magical environmental planning recognize that changes in Arctic conditions affect global magical energy patterns and require coordinated international response to maintain magical environmental stability. Research into the magical effects of changing Arctic conditions provides data essential for predicting and adapting to magical environmental changes that will affect magical communities worldwide. As you envision these vast networks of connection that link the remotest Arctic settlements to magical communities around the globe, where knowledge flows across continents and cultures like the Aurora that dances between earth and sky, and where the wisdom developed in the world's most challenging environment contributes to magical understanding that benefits practitioners everywhere. Consider this: how might we strengthen the connections between different magical communities and traditions in our own time? And what can we learn from Arctic examples about the importance of sharing knowledge and resources to ensure that magical wisdom reaches all who can benefit from it? Chapter 12. The Enduring Legacy of Frozen Magic. As our journey through the vast realms of Tundra magic draws to its close, we find ourselves contemplating not an ending, but a beginning, the moment when ancient wisdom preserved in ice and snow begins to influence the future of magical practice across all climates and cultures. Tonight, we explore how the lessons learned in the world's most challenging magical environment continue to shape contemporary magical understanding and offer guidance for magical practitioners facing the uncertainties of an ever-changing world. The preservation magic that characterizes tundra environments has given magical scholars access to techniques and knowledge that span thousands of years, creating an unbroken chain of magical wisdom that connects contemporary practitioners to the earliest days of organized magical practice. Unlike magical traditions in other climates, where knowledge has been lost to war, natural disaster, or simple passage of time, Arctic magical communities have maintained libraries of practical wisdom that offer solutions to problems that remain relevant to modern magical challenges. Picture yourself standing in one of these preserved Arctic libraries, where scrolls and books maintain perfect readability despite their incredible age, where magical artifacts function as well today as they did when first created centuries ago, and where the accumulated wisdom of generations awaits discovery by contemporary practitioners willing to learn from the patient teachings of Tundra magic. These repositories represent more than historical curiosities. They serve as laboratories where ancient techniques can be tested, refined, and adapted to meet modern needs. The environmental magical techniques developed in Arctic conditions provide models for sustainable magical practice that become increasingly relevant as magical communities worldwide face questions about the long-term environmental impact of their magical activities. The conservation principles that Tundra practitioners developed out of necessity, using minimal magical energy to achieve maximum effect, working with rather than against natural forces, creating magical systems that enhance rather than deplete environmental magical resources, offer guidance for developing magical practices that can be sustained indefinitely without damaging the magical environment. Modern magical communities have begun incorporating Arctic energy conservation techniques into their own practices, finding that the efficiency principles developed for Arctic survival translate into improved magical performance and reduced environmental impact in all climates. The patient, measured approach to magical work that characterizes Tundra magic helps contemporary practitioners develop greater precision and control while reducing the magical energy waste that characterizes much modern spell casting. The collaborative magical techniques that Arctic communities developed for survival in harsh conditions provide models for cooperation that address many of the challenges facing contemporary magical society. The shared responsibility systems that ensure Arctic community survival offer alternatives to the competitive individualism that can undermine magical cooperation in more affluent environments, while the conflict resolution techniques developed for communities that must work together to survive provide effective approaches to magical disputes and disagreements. Educational institutions worldwide have begun incorporating Arctic magical techniques into their curricula, recognizing that the discipline, patience, and environmental awareness required for successful Tundra magic provide excellent training for all forms of magical practice. Students who learn to work within the constraints of Arctic magical conditions develop adaptability and resourcefulness that serve them well, regardless of where their magical careers ultimately lead them. The theoretical contributions that Arctic magical research has made to fundamental magical understanding continue to influence magical scholarship across all specialties. The discoveries about magical energy behavior under extreme conditions, the insights into the relationship between environmental stability and spell effectiveness, and the revelations about magical energy conservation and storage. These theoretical advances reshape our understanding of basic magical principles in ways that affect all magical practice. Climate adaptation techniques developed by Arctic magical communities provide essential knowledge for magical practitioners who must adapt to changing environmental conditions worldwide. As global climate patterns shift and traditional magical environments change, the experience that Arctic practitioners have gained in adapting magical techniques to challenging conditions becomes increasingly valuable for maintaining effective magical practice under new and unpredictable circumstances. The magical weather prediction and climate modification techniques pioneered in Arctic regions now contribute to global magical efforts to understand and influence large-scale environmental patterns. The patient, long-term approach to weather magic that characterizes Arctic practice provides models for magical climate work that operates on the scales necessary for addressing planetary environmental challenges. Healing magic adapted for Arctic conditions has contributed techniques that prove effective for treating injuries and illnesses that resist conventional magical healing approaches. The integration of physical and magical healing that Arctic conditions demand has led to holistic healing techniques that address both magical and physical aspects of illness more effectively than treatments that focus exclusively on either magical or physical symptoms. The mental discipline techniques developed through Arctic magical practice the patience required for long-term magical projects, the focus needed for precision spellcasting under stress, the emotional stability necessary for surviving isolation and hardship, provide training methods that benefit magical practitioners facing any type of challenging conditions. These psychological preparation techniques have found applications in magical emergency response, high-stress magical professions, and personal magical development programs. Magical architecture and construction techniques derived from Arctic building methods influence contemporary magical construction projects worldwide. The energy efficiency principles that characterize Arctic magical buildings, the integration of magical and structural systems that Arctic construction demands, and the durability standards that Arctic conditions require all contribute to improved magical architecture that performs better and lasts longer regardless of climate. The artistic traditions that emerged from Arctic magical practice continue to inspire creative work that celebrates the beauty and power of environmental magical forces. Ice sculpture techniques adapted for temperate climates, Aurora-inspired artistic traditions, and the aesthetic principles derived from snow and ice formations all contribute to magical art traditions that honor the natural world while demonstrating magical mastery. Conservation magic techniques developed for preserving Arctic magical environments provide models for magical environmental protection efforts worldwide. The integration of magical practice with environmental stewardship that Arctic conditions demand offers guidance for magical communities seeking to reduce their environmental impact while maintaining effective magical practice. International cooperation frameworks developed for supporting Arctic magical communities provide models for magical assistance and knowledge sharing that address magical challenges requiring resources beyond what any single community can provide. These cooperation systems demonstrate how magical communities can work together to address challenges that transcend local boundaries while respecting the autonomy and traditions of participating communities. Research into the psychological and spiritual effects of Arctic magical practice reveals benefits that extend far beyond practical magical applications. The enhanced awareness, emotional stability, and spiritual depth that characterize experienced Arctic practitioners provide evidence for magical practices that support not just magical development, but overall human flourishing and life satisfaction. The future applications of Arctic magical principles promise continued influence on magical development across all areas of magical practice. As magical technology advances and new magical challenges emerge, the fundamental principles discovered Arctic magical practice, efficiency, sustainability, cooperation, patience, environmental awareness, provide guidance for ensuring that magical advancement serves human welfare while protecting the natural and magical environments that sustain all life. Training programs that incorporate Arctic magical principles without requiring actual Arctic travel make these valuable techniques accessible to practitioners worldwide. Simulation systems that recreate Arctic magical conditions, intensive programs that teach Arctic techniques in controlled environments, and distance learning systems that connect students with Arctic practitioners all contribute to spreading Arctic magical wisdom to much larger audiences than traditional Arctic training could reach. The preservation of traditional Arctic magical knowledge through modern documentation and teaching systems ensures that this wisdom remains available even as Arctic communities themselves change and adapt to contemporary conditions. Digital archives, video documentation, and systematic knowledge preservation projects protect Arctic magical traditions while making them accessible to international audiences who can benefit from this ancient wisdom. As we conclude our exploration of the magnificent frozen realm, where patience becomes power, where harsh conditions forge unbreakable magical discipline, and where the wisdom of ages lies preserved in crystalline perfection, waiting to guide future generations of magical practitioners, we find ourselves enriched by understanding that transcends the boundaries of climate and culture. The legacy of frozen magic extends far beyond the Arctic regions where it originated, offering all magical practitioners lessons about sustainability, cooperation, precision, and the profound magical power that emerges when we learn to work harmoniously with the natural forces that surround us, rather than struggling against them. In contemplating these timeless teachings that flow from the world's most challenging magical environment, where every spell cast must serve survival, and where magical wisdom accumulates like layers of snow building into permanent glaciers of knowledge, we might ask ourselves, what aspects of Arctic magical wisdom call most strongly to our own magical practice, and how might we honor the patient, sustainable, cooperative spirit of Tundra magic in our own journey toward magical mastery and service to the greater magical community?